It all starts with an idea. It doesn't need to be groundbreaking or revolutionary. It doesn't even need to be complete. But, at the very least, there should be some semblance of a plan. We'll take a look at what we're going to use for Ajax and how it evolved over pre-season from an idea into a fully fledged set of tactics. There will be a lot of similarities to the approach we used with Aston Villa, even if the execution will be different. We will look to dominate possession by being methodical in build-up. We'll give our attacking players the freedom to roam and create, and we'll look to smother the opponent out of possession. Let's start with build-up. As clear favourites in the league, it's reasonable to expect that most teams will approach us defensively. As a result, we'll favour a 2-3 build-up shape. This should help establish ourselves in the opposition half, with good lateral support to our front five. Positioning will be important here, as we'll want the players on the outside to sit between the flanks and half space so they can step into either to help create situational overloads. We'll look to be aggressive in the counter-press. The 2-3 shape is vulnerable on the flanks to the counter-attack, but with 5 players in the front line and 3 in the secondary, we're well positioned to try and prevent this threat at source. In attack, whilst we want to occupy each of the 5 vertical corridors to stretch the opposition, I want to promote fluid movement by using roles that will change position and be difficult for the defence to pick up. With that in mind, this is the initial plan. Inverted wingbacks on either side who will form that bank of 3 with the defensive midfielder. This will allow us to use our best attacking players in the front 5 and reduce the recovery distance when we do lose the ball. I expect we will need to be more defensive on the left-hand side, where we need to be wary of Calvin Bassey's technical limitations. A traditional winger on the left, who will be expected to attack the box when the ball is on the other side, whilst on the right we'll look to have Tadic cut inside and create from the half space, with the hope that the Mezzala will situationally drift outside to provide the width or attack the box. Everyone will have the freedom to roam. Now, having an idea and having a good idea are 2 very different things. The pre-season will be a great opportunity for us to see what works and what doesn't. In particular, I'll be looking at the formation of that midfield 3 and the interaction on the right-hand side. We also have 2 more traditional wingbacks in Van Gaal and Sanchez, and so we need to adapt when they're in the lineup. First, however, we need to talk about fixtures. Normally I like to respect pre-arranged friendlies as much as possible, because whilst it's only a game, I can't help but think it would be a bit of a dick move to cancel them at short notice. That said, I really don't like the schedule, especially the Friendly Cup, which will conclude only 2 days before our Johan Cruyff Shield fixture against PSV, and so we'll make wholesale changes. There are creators far smarter than I who've looked into the optimal approach for pre-season friendlies, and if that's what you're looking for, I've added some suggested reading in the description. Personally, my preferred approach is to have a game every 4 days. That gives 1 full day for training, 1 day for preparation, and 1 day for recovery. And so this is how our pre-season schedule now looks. There is an element of having to make the most of which opponents were available, but I'm also very deliberate in choosing 3rd division sides for many of our fixtures. Beyond building fitness, these games are very useful for seeing our attacking structure. We expect to have a lot of possession, and so there'll be lots of opportunities to observe how we move in the final third, and whether some of our ideas are structurally solid. Connie Clicker are up first. To give you an idea of how we're going to do this, we'll play a half each with a mixture of starters and backups. Most notably, we'll have Van Gaal one half and Sanchez in the other, so we'll actually split our formation in 2 to observe different elements of the original idea in each half. We'll also see whether we can get the desired build-up shape by using a deep line playmaker instead of an inverted wing-back on the side of the attacking fullback. And so let's start with the good. Throughout the game we saw good shape from our midfield 3, and in particular the inverted wing-back on support, who kept his position in between the half space and the flank as we wanted. This wasn't quite the same when we built up on the inverted wing-back side, however, as we saw the deep line playmaker sitting too narrow for my liking. This should be easy to remedy. From this clip we can also see the issue we had with the Mezzala. This is one of those moments where I want to see that situational width. With Tadic cutting inside, I want the Mezzala to make a run into the space he creates, ideally between the centre-back and full-back. If neither defender tracks him, he's now in space for a reverse pass. If the full-back tracks him, the centre-back has to step up, and that creates an angle behind to play in Brobby. If the centre-back tracks him, that creates a more direct pass for the striker. Instead, he ambled forward, which would have closed the passing angle had it not been for poor defending on Connie Klicker's behalf. This was an issue throughout the game, as can be seen from the chalkboard, with Taylor only once receiving the ball in wide spaces, outside of throw-ins. This is something that might be difficult to get right, as there isn't an easy way to instruct the Mezzala to do exactly what I want. On a positive note, however, we did see Tadić receiving the ball regularly in the half space. With that in mind, we've made 2 changes for OFC. The deep-lying playmaker has been instructed to stay wider, in the hope he will mirror the positioning of the inverted wingback. We've also changed the inverted winger to trequartista, and added the sit narrower and hold up ball instruction. The belief here is that Tadić will continue to operate in the same spaces as before, but with him taking a more narrow position earlier and keeping hold of the ball, it will also allow the play to develop enough for the Mezzala to drift into those wider spaces. We're also starting Klaassen in that position, as he is naturally right-footed. We can see the difference immediately. Within the opening minute, the trequartista drops deep and Klaassen pushes into a position where he can then run the channel. It's not perfect by any stretch, but we can see from passes received that he is getting into those areas more frequently. We also saw better spacing from the deep-lying playmaker, with him splitting a little wider than before. It's nice that we've seen progress immediately, but there are still a few issues to fix. Firstly, Robbie as a pressing forward on attack was rarely involved. He managed a grand total of 13 touches, which, considering our dominance, is rather poor. I'm also not convinced with the false 9. He dropped into midfield to help Link play well, but struggled to influence things further up the pitch. Our next friendly is against fellow Eredivisie side Excelsior. I'm picking a slightly stronger starting 11 here, as I want to see how we cope defensively against more capable opposition, but we'll still be making wholesale changes at half-time. Based on the OFC game, we've changed the pressing forward from attack to support, and added move into channels. The false 9 has been swapped with a shadow striker, and we've added instructions to stay wider and roam from position. Lo and behold, our pressing forward was more involved, dropping deep to link play while still getting a goal. That was his only shot, however, and it should probably come as no surprise that, given those changes, we lacked penetration. Kudus as shadow striker was a lot more active up and down the pitch, but when Robbie dropped deep, he wasn't able to then spearhead the attack. In the second half, with our weaker lineup, Excelsior managed to create some chances. Whilst Fitzjim is not particularly adept at the defensive side of the game, he seemed rather passive. In fact, when I looked at the chalkboard, I discovered that across the 2 players playing that role, they'd combined for a single defensive action. It's time to take a look at the regular 4-3-3, with double inverted wingbacks. In an attempt to get the central pivot more involved in the defensive side of the game, we'll drop him to defend duty and add tackle harder. We're also going to see how Van Dal performs in a higher starting position. He's accomplished there and could give us an additional dimension in the pressing game. What I didn't expect, however, was that he'd be a goal-scoring threat. Not much can really be ascertained from a game against 3rd Division AFC, but it was a pleasant surprise seeing him get a brace. Now, the first thing I noticed was that we took a lot of shots from outside the area. 10 of our 27 efforts is over 35%, and the biggest culprit was Taylor as the box-to-box midfielder. Sure, he scored a very nice goal, but was otherwise wasteful. We also saw a surprising weakness between the left-back and the centre-back, with AFC creating a couple of chances from long balls pinged in between the two. As this is the side that is set up more defensively, I was a bit shocked, but it was noticeable that the space between both was unnecessarily large. Our final game is against Katwijk, and we've got a few changes in mind. Firstly, we've added trap outside, in the hope this will see the defence take a slightly narrower shape out of possession. We've also changed the left-sided inverted wing-back onto support. This is a case of if it works somewhere else, just copy it. And as we haven't had issues down our right-hand side, we'll see if that helps provide more solidity. I've not been happy with our central striker, and so we're going to give Bergwijn the start as a deep line forward. He's not necessarily got the physicality, but he is both quicker and a better distributor than Robbie and Luca. Finally, we've switched the box-to-box midfielder to a supporting Mezzala in the hope they'll be a little bit more crafty in the final third. Both Mezzalas have been asked to tackle harder in an attempt to be more active in the counter-press. I'm happy. The change to a deep-lying forward is giving the results I want to see. Bergwijn dropped deep to link play, but also did a great job running the channels. 2 goals ruled out for offside suggests he might need to spend some time working on his movement, but all in all, that's a significant improvement. Taylor as a supporting Mezzala was still a little wasteful with his shooting from distance, but did a better job in carrying the ball and looking for that final pass. Overall, we're in a good place and looked a lot more secure defensively. A footnote to the pre-season, the Johan Cruyff Shield took place between the AFC and Katwijk fixtures. This was an opportunity to put down an early marker, and so there was less focus on experimentation and more on what had worked so far up to that point. Taylor carried a suspension from the previous season, and so we went with a complete wingback, deep-line playmaker, shadow striker combination on the left, and it worked a treat. Kudus opened the scoring, racing onto Wrench's delightful raking pass only 10 minutes in. Grilic, playing in the playmaker slot, then put through Tadic for the second, and the game was done. PSV saw more of the ball than I would have liked, but we restricted them to just one shot all game long. If we take a look at where we started to where we finished, we can see quite a few changes. In particular, there have been a number of tweaks to the front line to try and capture the movements we are looking for. The inclusion of a trequartista who holds the ball up has helped create opportunities for the Mezzala to overlap and provide situational width, whilst the deep line forward is giving us the balance between link-up play and goal threat, which was missing with a pressing forward. In the deeper positions, there were a few assumptions that proved to be false. We had expectations that the inverted wing-back on the left-hand side would need to be more defensive. This seemed to create issues in itself, and so we've changed the duty to support and adjusted team instructions to trap outside. We also found our midfield to be a little too passive, and so all have been instructed to tackle harder, and the defensive midfielder has been dropped to a defensive duty. The biggest assumption of all, however, was that we'd need to use both fullbacks in build-up. During the course of pre-season, we saw the viability of using a deep-lying playmaker to release an attacking wing-back and the effectiveness of the shadow striker. Realistically, as we head into the regular season, I have a feeling this might end up the preferred formation. Of course, this is an ongoing process, and the tactic will continue to evolve as the season progresses. Pre-season offers a unique opportunity, however, in so much as it allows us to experiment without jeopardy. We've taken a very critical eye to our performances, focusing on the small details that are often glossed over or covered up by victory. This ensures we have a solid foundation, and I feel like we're in a good place going into the regular season. An opening day 3-0 win over Fortuna Sittard certainly suggests we are. Until next time.